Welcome everybody to the last session of the 2023 State of Medical Device True Quality Summit Series. Thank you to everyone who has been with us this week and in the MedTech Excellence community engaging in conversation. It's not too late to get your free copy of the 2023 MedTech Industry Benchmark Report. Check out the MedTech Excellence community where you will get free access to this report, as well as be able to engage in conversation with today's speakers and peers. If you did not catch yesterday's session, you can access the recordings on the replay section of the website. Today, we have one of the most highly anticipated sessions, the compliance concern, challenges and roadblocks for ensuring compliance in 2023. With us today is a stacked panel lineup. Everyone welcome David Shanes, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at Full Power Technologies Incorporated, Amanda Feddersen, Quality Assurance Manager at Monitored Therapeutics Incorporated, Carlos Almeida, Vice President of Engineering at SPK and Associates, and Veronica Michuluk. I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly, Veronica. You can correct me when you speak, but Digital Health Principal at HTD. This session will run for 35 minutes with 10 minutes allotted for questions at the end. If any questions come up throughout the presentation, please ask in the Q&A section of the chat on the right-hand side, and we'll get as many answered as possible. All right, and I'm going to put a couple links in the chat for you. And with that, we can go ahead and get started. All right. Hello, panel. Our first question today is, what makes compliance so difficult for medical device companies? Anybody can start.
Chime in there.
Yeah, anybody can start.
You're not going to point like a CNN style? No. I'll start. Just compliance in any regulated industry is a challenge, right? Aerospace, automotive, financial. With medical device, you are dealing a lot with the changing landscape of technology, just like all the other industries are. But it feels like we're always trying to play catch up from a regulatory perspective on what's happening. If you've been following all the AI technology, and I'm waiting for my chat GPT heart monitor at some point, and analytics across for IoT devices, and all that kind of stuff, just sort of keeping pace with that. You have to do all the traditional things for your design history file, design inputs and outputs, and full traceability, auditability, and a lot of risk management activities. But those are the sort of things that really makes it a challenge. Being ready for an audit at any time, having your CAPA system ready to address things that come up, and try to do this is still be making a profitable product that can get out to market with safety and efficacy. So there's a lot. If you're going to do a medical device product, you really are going to be challenged with all these sort of regulatory overlay items.
Yeah, that is so true.
For sure. And I think, adding to that, those are all great points. I agree. The landscape is very confusing, right? You walk in and there's a lot of different rules from a lot of different regulatory agencies, even just within the US, right? We're all familiar with the FDA QSR. There's 13485 if you want to do that. But even just with the FDA, they'll put up there's a guidance document for home use. There's a guidance document for mobile medical devices. There's a guidance document on AI and machine learning. There's one on cybersecurity. There's one on software as a medical device. And can you imagine opening all these up on your 12 monitors and trying to distill everything you need to do from all of these different standards and guidance documents? And and for some of us, we're getting into cloud technologies. How does putting data up or through the cloud impact any of this? And I think that these regulations all just make it really hard to understand it can make it hard for us as regulatory or quality professionals to communicate to management, how long is it going to take? Well, how do you get that predictability? How am I supposed to plan a schedule and a budget? Based on everything I need to comply with, when can I go to market? And I think a lot of that makes it hard for people to really understand and digest that. And it gets really frustrating for companies. And sometimes they're kind of, we'll do the best we can. And if something comes up along the way, we'll pivot. But that pivoting is expensive. Having to change product development, project strategies, really trying to understand the impact. And I think it really puts the emphasis on us in trying to figure out how to be the best partners throughout the development cycle, and making sure we're there at the beginning to really understand how we can be a partner and not be brought on later and be seen as a blocker to getting products to market when it comes to compliance. And I think some of that is just, it's on us too, right? We don't do a great job always explaining the whys to management and to the people doing the work. Why do we have to do all this documentation? Why do we have to send it out for certification testing? Why do we have to drop test and ship test and zap it with 10,000 volts? And I think really getting people to understand, it's not about compliance. It's about good engineering practices and good, complete, consistent documentation, so that when Joe quits and Betty starts, she can read the documentation and understand why we are where we are and all the mistakes that we've made in the past, so we don't do them all over again. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, and I can just echo everything what you just mentioned, David and Carlos, because as you mentioned, I would say that compliance is very broad, right? Very broad topic, but also so crucial and so important for all the companies, but especially for the companies in medical device space, in medical device industries, because we really have to always remember that at the end of this journey, there is a patient, there is a real person using our devices, right? So the compliance really helps us to make sure that we really care and we ensure that patient is safe at the end. And I can say also maybe what makes this the compliance so difficult is, like you mentioned, also the complexity. It's like there is CAPA from one hand, there is document control, there is cybersecurity. And maybe also, as we at HTD, at our company, we are focusing on software as medical device development. So cybersecurity is very crucial for us because nowadays technology is really advancing so quickly, so have also like tactics of hackers. And as a result, the medical data are exchanged between patients, healthcare providers, suppliers, and manufacturers. So really, like, healthcare industry relies on cybersecurity to protect patients and other sensitive data. So that's why it's also very important to remember when developing these processes, when working on document control, to remember about cybersecurity, right? Because it's pretty new. But FDA is also really paying attention to it, as they've been drafting some guidelines, and the new guideline is coming in 2023. So I also think this is a very important topic.
I think for my company, being a small startup that was developed from seed capital, is really the cost that that quality really takes on our company. For trademarks, patents, FDA clearances, legal fees, and just developing a QMS from the ground up is really expensive. So I think that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, no, all of those points are so true. It's like you have so many different things are changing all the time. So it's really hard for companies to not only maintain compliance, but do things in a way that starts them at the beginning with success, right? Well, that kind of brings us to our next question. In last year's survey, accelerating product development was a top business objective. And as you can see in this slide, this year it shifted dramatically to compliance readiness. What do you guys think is the reason for this shift? And Have you noticed something similar in your own organizations?
Yeah. So I don't know who would like to start, but I can kick off the conversation. This one. Okay, so I believe the shift. I'm actually very happy that it happened. That more and more organizations are really paying attention to it, because like businesses and organizations face growing demands to achieve the compliance with regulations that are designed to protect consumer, and customer information. As stated in this in the survey, in Greenlight Guru survey, like top executives typically stress speeding product development and approvals, and management sees a critical need to upgrade system and processes to stay like audit ready, what we mentioned, and comply with regulatory requirements. So I have to say that when being in a company that, have, let's say, management and top executives on the same side, have to feel really blessed to do so, because then the company can go in the right direction. As for me, I do believe that it's really important to focus on compliance, focus on quality since the very, very early stages of the development, because if we really, invest resources in equality, we'll be able to develop better products. And I believe that the ROI will come thanks to it. Sometimes it's better to spend more time thinking about optimal strategy for the devices, or spending more time to ensure highest quality, rather than just rushing product development and missing some steps on the way. I would also maybe think about some compound effect here. So let's think, if we skip one thing, then we skip another one, then one more, then we will say that, oh, this process is not so crucial for us. And then we'll create more and more non-conformities, which will then create for us really many problems at the end. But then if we think about it from the other side, if we correct one process, then if we think more about the quality from the other side, then if we, think about compliance, maybe a little bit longer, then the compound effect will work for us better. And then at the end, I do believe we'll create better product. And then, it will be win-win situation for both top executives and management. So just to also maybe finish up with this question, I'm also happy to see that, yes, at my organization, we've seen that as well. So we've been shifting to the quality and compliance, which, as I mentioned, made me happy.
I think at my company, we're a small company, we're 40 people. I'm the first regulatory person that was brought in to kind of get everything up and going and get that first FDA clearance. So I think some small companies are looking at this saying that also in an unstable economy, that might be a good market to go after. People are going to be sick and people are going to need medical devices to get better. So I think there are new people looking at compliance, which kind of might be raising that awareness for them. I think there's been high profile misses out there, whether it's Abbott and baby formula, or Philips Respironics and all the CPAPs, and just there's been some really high profile misses. And so and people don't want to be that, they don't want to get in consent decree. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want to be told they can't manufacture or sell a product for years. And then I think on top of that, we also have this changing regulatory landscape. We kind of got into this cadence. We know how to get through the FDA. 1345 came out. We like, oh, I can figure that out. And then MDSAP came out and we're like, wait, what's this? This is new. I need to figure this out. And now the EU is coming out with the MDR that they can't figure that out. And everybody just knows it's going to be super complicated. We talked about it a lot at True Quality in San Diego, about how EU is trying to figure out MDR, like who's going to be the bodies that can even certify you, and what's this even going to look like. And then with Brexit, the UK came out with the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, and they're like, well, we're going to have our own set of rules if you want to bring a medical device into Great Britain. So I think that that extra emphasis is just, we're kind of going out there and there's a little bit of, we're freaking out and we got to figure out how to adjust to all of these changes out there. And I think some of that has caused us to realize that this compliance is going to get a little more complicated, and we do need to put this emphasis on it. And for me, that's kind of why I think it might be changing in that. I don't think companies are less interested in getting good products to market faster and realizing that revenue. I think they're just realizing that it's going to be a little more complicated to do it, and they have to put a little more emphasis there.
I can say from, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Mabel.
I was going to say the end of the pandemic also showed my company that there was more of an interest in people coming out to audit, pharmaceutical companies coming to audit us again. So when they hadn't been doing so during the pandemic, we had the FDA show up right after the pandemic was over. So it seems like there's more of uptick in audits, especially for us, since the pandemic has ended.
I'm gonna dovetail on something that Veronica said up in the first session part. I am responsible for implementing a lot of the DevOps environments in multiple companies, and the attention has shifted a lot more to, making compliance built in tighter into your ALM process, your SDLC process. Example that Veronica mentioned is cybersecurity. That's like every new company I've been engaging with, that they're talking about that and how they can embed that right up front in the beginning of the DevOps cycle. It's DevSecOps now, that's what they call it. And static analysis is now security application testing, static analysis. So I see a lot of influencing just, how do we do it right by design, and how do we have tools and processes to keep us, following what we need to do and keep track of it. So that is, I think, one of the bigger areas that I've seen changing in my environment.
Yeah, and that is so true. And I something that came to mind as you guys were speaking, and what do you think, like, for companies that have good intentions and they want to be, they are wanting to have a more focus on compliance, regulatory, and quality, how do they start this kind of a culture shift in their organization?
Great question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like moving a super tanker. It's you're not going to make a right-hand turn quickly. It's slow progress over a long period of time. It's getting people, it's back to getting people to understand the why do we do this? It's understanding that it's not a static thing, any more than a lot of, I'm a software engineer by trade. If I didn't keep learning, I'd still be programming in BASIC. But, you get out there and you're like, wow, the world's changing around me and I have to learn how to adapt to it. So in engineering, whether it's new languages, new tools, new methodologies, it's the same on the regulatory side, and we have to look at it like that. There's new regulations, there's new interpretations of regulations, there's things that we figure out over the course of time. Well, it's like, hey, we used to do it this way, but we found out there's a better way. And so we're not trying to inundate you with regulations. We're trying to say there are new ways for us to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. So to adapt to that, we're going to modernize our standards. We're going to modernize what we look at and how we look at it. And that's part of that partnership. When I used to do infusion pumps and I met with the FDA, it was like there were two sides of the FDA, right? There's the enforcement side, the ones that come with badges and guns and yellow tape that we're all scared of. And then there's the other side that says, we want to partner with industry and we want you to explain to us what your challenges are so we can work together to advance the regulations. And sometimes we see those two sides of the FDA as the same, and we're freaked out to talk to one side because we're worried that they're going to talk to each other, and then the enforcement sides are going to come knocking on our door. But that other side of the FDA that really wants to partner with industry really wants to understand what we're doing, why are we doing it. We were going through this with open source for a long time. You know, they're like, we get you guys want to use open source tools, and we're not, you know, the FDA is not saying no, we're saying we don't understand. Like, explain it to us. What does this mean? How do we regulate this? Do we need to regulate this? And I think it's just kind of that evolving relationship. And it's forums like this where we're talking to each other and we're bouncing ideas. You know, none of us are the smartest people in the room ever when it comes to this. We have to lean on each other. We have to lean on Greenlight Guru. We have to lean on these academy sessions and the community forum to bounce ideas off of each other, because we all have different experiences. And I think us getting smarter as regulatory professionals helps us speak more authoritatively and with confidence to our teams, that we know what we're doing. We're trying to explain it the right way, in a way that makes sense. And it can help people understand the why and everything we do.
Fully agree with you, David. And also what I would add to it is like, really showing the value of it for the team is crucial, because if they really see the value and they understand, hey, why do I have to write all these documents? Why do I need this documentation? Why do I need all the processes? If they really understand the value and the reason, I believe then they will really believe in it. And then, you know, they will also like believe and learn and just do it. They will be more willing to do so. And what I can say that from my experience, like if when I started in the very beginning, like just like showing some time ago for the team, you know, these are, let's say, these are the processes that we should follow. These are the regulations, but the team didn't really, you know, bought into it. So then we changed, you know, like, okay, what is the value added? What's in it for you? What's in it for our customer? Then once the team really believed in it and understood, then, you know, it shifted, it went. But as you also mentioned, it's not a static process. And I believe we should also lead by example and try to be, let's say, understandable, not to use too many abbreviations, because we in our area, in our space, we can just talk, you know, like Kappa, we can say SOP, etc., but not everyone understands that. So maybe also trying to be, let's say, really easy to understand and learn for others, and make it really as a value for others will also help.
I think, oh, go ahead, Carlos.
So I was going to say exactly my thoughts. Motivation is a key thing. Often it's, you don't want to, you want folks to want to take care of compliant, because they're going to improve the quality. It's just, what we do a lot of is trying to monetize that, right? If we're taking care of quality up front, and we're going to have lower problems. We're going to have a better customer adoption, you know, much less, you know, post-market support issues, just reputation of the company. There's so many good things that you get by taking care of things up front, you know, and
Right.
the cost of fixing a problem, you know, at the developer's desktop to in system testing to being manufactured to at the customer is like exponentially increases, right? The cost. So often the motivation to me is like, let me show you how much it's going to cost if we don't do these things, and how much we can reinvest in innovation if we do these things. And that gets people thinking,
Right.
you know, in a better way.
I was going to say, for us, having the Greenlight Guru platform and having everyone in our organization on that platform, I feel like more people taking ownership in their training and knowing where processes and procedures are located, and if they need a form where they can grab it. And I think that brings a bigger piece of quality to everyone in the organization, because they can own their own training, look at it, see if they're late. So it's been instrumental for us to have the EQMS. I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah, and I think Carlos is right. Yeah, there's a little bit of salesmanship in there. you know, our jobs is to get them to want to do it. And, you know, when you think about, like, you know, an engineer not wanting to write documentation, there are engineers that don't want to write documentation because they're like, well, if I tell you how I do everything, then you don't need me and you might get rid of me. And we can turn around and go, yeah, but if you don't document what you're doing, I also can't promote you because no one else knows how to do your job. You know, so it's kind of like spinning it a little bit and trying to get them to look at it from a different perspective, that, you know, this isn't something that's, you know, a burden, it's also an opportunity. And I know it's hard, right? I mean, I've run engineering, I've run R&D, I've run manufacturing, and so I've been the person who's been told what to do, and I've been the person telling people what to do, and I think that's really that balance about getting out there. You know, don't bring them to your office and tell them what they have to do. Go to their place of work and talk to them on their floor where they feel comfortable, and have the conversation in a way that's more disarming.
Yes, definitely. And this conversation really goes, it corresponds to this slide where, you know, only 29% of pre-market companies are very knowledgeable about compliance. And I think what a lot of you guys touched on is the value, like explaining the value of compliance. Is there anything else that, you know, companies can do to increase this statistic, or what do you think the implications of, you know, companies, these pre-market companies not being very knowledgeable about compliance could be?
So maybe this is also very good, good question, and very important one that I believe we should discuss a bit, because 29%, I think it's pretty big number, because if you think about, like, hey, these are 29% of the companies there that, you know, don't possess enough knowledge, let's say, to be fully compliant. And maybe the reasons are different. Maybe because these are new companies, like startups. They don't have enough, let's say, resources and funds. They don't have knowledge in-house, like regulatory teams or quality teams, right, that could guide them and really support them and lead them throughout the process. So maybe what these companies could do is to look for some partners. For example, you know, there are many partners out there in the market that provide consulting, advisory, that could guide these companies without having somebody, let's say, in-house, right? The full quality regulatory team in-house, but by having a partner, consultant, these small companies would for sure gain the knowledge, gain the trust, and also be, let's say, on the safe side to ensure that they comply with all the regulations, and they actually, you know, can, let's say, then have the product on the market. So to make the whole story short, I believe if you cannot afford to have somebody in-house, let's look for some partners or some community members, like even the Greenlight Guru community. It's perfect and fantastic to network and to learn from each other.
I'm a big believer of training your staff and ongoing training, and so building a culture, right? So it has to be done, and it has to be part of an employee's objectives. It's not just you need to take this particular compliance wire thing that is a state regulation or something like that. But you need to actually get into, you know, we did an audit, and what did we learn from it? How do we feed back into our quality improvement, continuous improvement, and make it an objective for employees? I mean, from an HR perspective, I'm coming from that perspective, because you have to invest in training, and you have to really bring everyone up, I think. And then you need to layer your tools and processes and take advantage of tools like Greenlight. Lean on your vendors who are, you know, they're trying to provide ways to codify what you need to do and leverage, right? So you bring up the knowledge and you bring up your processes and tools together. I think you're never done. You're just constantly fighting the battle and keeping up with things. But so I would put my money on training.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the implications are pretty straightforward, right? You either, if you don't do it right, you don't get your product approved. You find out late that you have to make pivots in how you design, develop, manufacture the product, lots of different things. And we all know that those pivots late in the process get super expensive. And then, you know, we've talked about small companies. They can get so expensive that the company just doesn't survive. They don't get the product to market. And we lose an opportunity to get a great innovative product out there into the hands of patients that it can help, because they just, you know, the strategy to get there wasn't good. Or worst case, you make a mistake and, you know, people come with the yellow tape and your product gets recalled, and then you spend a lot of time and money trying to fix it. And none of those are really great options. And I think from a compliance point of view, it's, you know, if you have regulatory in-house, that's great. You know, again, we've said that you have to stay up on all of the regulations. If you don't have regulatory in-house, you need to bring somebody in. But, you know, that story's got to be complete, right? The purpose of starting that regulatory plan at the beginning of a product is, you know, what is the product we're making? What are its intended uses? What's the indication for use? What markets are we going into? So we can think about all of the regulations that might apply up front. You know, who are the patient and user populations, and how do we design them correctly for those people? You know, old shaky fingers, young, colorblind, deaf, you know, are we addressing all of them, or did we think about that late? So it's really important to have regulatory in there up front to help make sure that the design, development, and manufacturing goes smoothly. And it's throughout the stage gate process. You know, you don't write a regulatory plan and then ignore regulatory to the end. If you're having these stage gate reviews, and if you're having you learn that you have to change something in the product, bring regulatory into it, because there could be a regulatory impact that's not known until the last minute. So it's really kind of teaching people to be that partner throughout the process.
I was going to say too that partnering with compliance experts, especially for us, being a smaller company where I'm the quality assurance manager here, but we don't really have a regulatory person on site. But being able to partner with Greenlight with their assist and ask questions in the middle of our FDA audit or our MDSAP audit, which we completed last year, was instrumental for us. And we had a guru talk to us right away whenever we needed something or had a question that we needed to ask, even when the auditor was there here auditing us. So Greenlight Guru has been amazing for us, and just that partnership we really appreciate.
Oh, good. We'd love to hear that, Amanda. Yeah, Guru Assist has, I know several companies that I work with that has just been instrumental for them to have that, you know, quick answer right at their fingertips. Well, we are going to start transitioning. We have a couple Q&A questions here, and we have this first question. This person is a product manager. They're wondering what best practices actually get quality involved with product sooner or early, you know, because they might have several products and quality is handling that side of things and also their quality system. So how do you make it work? What are some best practices?
So maybe I can start with it, because something from like my experience, let's say. And again, I can tell here the having good EQMS like Greenlight Guru will really help the team. And why? Because we at HDD, what we do, we are using the Greenlight Guru as a, let's say, source of truth for all the SOPs, all the work instructions, but also all the project-related documentation. So also believe by having like this kind of source of truth and easily accessible for the teams will really help you to streamline the processes, will help you to share the knowledge, and will help you to get everybody on the same page, let's say, because that will be really crucial to have everybody on the same page to move toward the same direction, right? So I would say that this is the good practice, but also to echo what Carlos mentioned in the previous session, the training. I would say let's start with the training and let's make sure that your team is well trained and your team knows what is the quality, knows what is even the intended use of the device, that they will be developing together. So training and having like let's say one source of truth easily accessible for others. So that's from my side.
I think, so for Dante's question, I haven't typically seen where quality doesn't want to be involved early in the process. I mean, they typically do want to be involved, but sometimes they kind of find out a little late. A typical scenario is you have an R&D team and you're like, go figure out some really cool new widget. And it kind of goes on to this, is quality and regulatory and a part of innovation? Do you start the design history file before anything's ever done? And companies will go and say, we're going to try and get as far down the product development process as we can before we have to start a DHF and go under design controls. And so when companies do that, there's an aspect of innovation where you say, it's easier to do innovation without quality involved because we can just, we can do whatever we want. We're throwing parts. It's like it's a giant Lego mess, right? We're putting things together and we're not worrying about documenting anything until we finally go, this is it. This is what we want to develop. And sometimes we'll go a little farther down that path and go, well, let's try and figure a few more things out. And let's try and figure a few more things out. And then we're like, okay, now we have an idea. Hey, quality, come check this out. And quality's like, wow, you made it that far already. Well, but we need this and we need this. And you already picked suppliers that aren't ISO 13485 certified. You're picking components that aren't good. You've already talked to a manufacturer who isn't the right manufacturing partner for this. So in my experience, quality wants to be involved as soon as possible. The only time they really don't is if they're overstressed and overburdened. We're under-resourced. We have so many problems with other products, or we're not doing documentation right. We're not using Greenlight Guru. So we just have piles of things that need to be hand routed and signed and then scanned and then filed. And we're going bananas just trying to keep up with documents. So we don't have that time to sit in that cross-functional partner meeting that we actually do want to be in and participate as a cross-functional partner in product development. So I think if you get pushback from quality, I'd try and understand the why. Hey, I want you to be here, and I want you to be a part. Are there things that we can do together to help us be successful? Are there things, I'll be your advocate. If qualities can't make it, try and understand why and be an advocate for them. I used to say, how do you like your coffee? If quality is overburdened, how can you help them to free up some of their burden so that they can come help you? Because it's a partnership all the way to the end. And so I think I'd try some of those approaches.
I would add, if your company is attempting to do more agile type of development, tier 45 type stuff, you're going to have your quality part of your team, because they're going to be creating releasable, testable entities, in sprints, and you have a team that's empowered, and there'll be a person in there who is going to be quality representative, as opposed to more of throwing over the wall later down. So if your company is adopting that or a hybrid model, you will have more involvement for the different disciplines in your development cycle.
I know we've touched on a lot about pre-market companies, but what do you guys think about what commercialized companies and manufacturers can do better on the compliance side of things?
Maybe not be static. Let's say try to revisit the procedures and the processes, try to be agile as well. As we've been mentioning in previous sessions, technology is evolving very fast. All the processes are evolving fast. Guidelines from FDA as well. So I do believe that even though if there is a company that is well established, is already in the market, let's say, and already has the processes and procedures established, I do believe that, let's say, even during the management reviews, they should revisit the processes and procedures to ensure that they keep them up to date and they improve any processes that need improvement. So let's, that's what I also mentioned at our company, at HTD, and that's what we do. We have the management reviews during which we really analyze all the data, we review all the processes, and we make data-driven decisions, which I believe really help us to also have the culture of quality.
I would say too, establishing that relationship with your manufacturer is really important, and having an open line of communication too. So, like if you're comfortable talking with your manufacturer, he knows your face or she. So really having that open line of communication.
I would add to that, that's perfect. Audit your supply chain regularly, because you have a lot of entities that need to feed into your product, and that's usually a sore spot. Something goes awry and you're not keeping track of it. Any good system you can add for post-market surveillance. Some of the companies who are, if it's allowed, depending on what you're doing, have more of an IoT approach, where if it's a device that can produce data set back to the factory, whether it's quality or maintenance schedules or any sort of things, usage, hospital sort of heavy hardware type of things. We're involved in a lot of that. So the machines are talking back to the factory saying, oh, this is how often this thing has been failing. You need to schedule service in advance of it. So all these sort of that with data analytics on the cloud to capture and get insights about how your device can fail out there, and just aggregate that data and study it. That's the new way of really staying on top of things once your product is out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think whether you're small or established, I think on both sides, there's a lot of, whether you're establishing new relationships with vendors and suppliers that supply goods or services for regulated devices, really clearly communicating expectations, roles, and responsibilities. If you're engaging with someone new, put together a quality agreement that says, this is what we're agreeing as far as what you can supply to me, when you have to inform me that parts are going end of life, or if you have to do an in-kind replacement, whether or not I have to approve it, who's writing documentation, who's proposing and who's approving, for documents, whose template, whose formats, whose quality management system reigns true. If you as a company are going after 1345 or you're going after MDSAP, don't do it in a vacuum. Communicate that to your suppliers and partners, because if you're 1345, then they're inheriting that in a way, right? Because when you come and get audited, the auditor can say, I want to go audit your suppliers. They may ask you for a list of your critical suppliers and say, we want to go audit your contract manufacturer. And if your contract manufacturer is not 1345 or hasn't re-upped it to 2016 or something, then they may not have the processes in place that are required for them to be a compliant supplier to you, and you should be auditing them more. So it's really just kind of understanding and communicating those expectations. View them as you really have to view them as a partner. And if you have a partner that's not 1345, that's fine. Just understand how you properly define those expectations, the roles and responsibilities, so you can have a good partnership going forward.
Yeah, and that's so important. We have a couple questions in the Q&A. One from Alex. He says, do you believe that with larger companies getting an MDSAP where the FDA no longer audits them increases the risk of FDA audits for smaller companies that don't have MDSAP?
I can take this one. So we were audited by the FDA this year, and we were a month away from going into our MDSAP audit. And the FDA auditor specifically said, well, if I would have waited a month, we wouldn't have needed to audit you. So I would say that, yes, that's absolutely true.
Anybody else have anything to add to that one?
I don't particularly have an opinion on that. We did MDSAP, but again, I would say I did a talk on MDSAP with Greenlight Guru, and I think the thing to watch on MDSAP is just be careful what you ask for if you're going to go MDSAP. Make sure you really understand what you're doing and why. It's more than just a bunch of letters on your company. There are a lot of implications, including your audit report automatically getting sent to all 5 regulatory agencies. Really think about that one. Like, and be willing to push back on management if they're saying, hey, we should do MDSAP, really understand the why.
That's good advice. Alex also has another question, and it kind of ties into some of what we've talked about, but he says, do you believe that pre-market companies that develop without a proper QMS will have problems later on trying to go for ISO certification and, building out their product? Do you think that, if they don't get it right at the very beginning, that it's all done for and there's no hope?
I think there's hope, but why go down that path? You should invest in getting a good solid QMS. It's just going to save you time and money and reduce errors, right? If you have some manual system or some hybrid, so you can recover maybe if it's not too bad. I'll stop there, but don't do that. That's what I say. Invest and do a good job up front and set up a good QMS.
So I think I have a good answer for this. Our product is a consumer product, and I was brought on to help turn that existing consumer product into a medical device. So I've been spending a year working on setting up the QMS, establishing it, and trying to figure out how to get all of the existing documentation to be compliant in a design history file. And what we've done is kind of like, this is everything that exists, and it's a giant gap analysis to say, this is what I have, and this is what I need to be in a proper design history file. How do we get from there to there? And we've spent a lot of time looking for holes in documentation, filling them up, changing how we do requirements, changing how we do traceability, talking about risk and risk analysis, looking for things that may have been missed, and figuring out how to put those into a compliant system. So, if an auditor walks in the door and says, show me that you had signed requirements before you went into design, and that, and looks for everything to be right, it may not be picture perfect, but again, it's all in how you tell the story, right? I have to be able to explain to an auditor that I've done a good job getting what we had, turning it into what it needs to be, and that I've done a good job with traceability and risk analysis. And I made sure we didn't miss any risks, and we didn't miss anything on usability. And that I've gone back and looked at cybersecurity, and I've looked at home use. And so it's not the easy way to do it, for sure, like you said, but I'd say I wouldn't choose to do this again in the future, but there's a path. And it's a complicated path because it's kind of like a little, you feel like if you're old like me, then it's like Quincy. You've got to go back and do a forensic analysis and say, what do I have and how the body get into this state? So
I caught your Quincy reference. I got it.
I got it too.
Well, we have time for one more question. Deborah asks if you could share your experience of a career roadmap to become a quality manager. And maybe this is a good one for Amanda, since you said you're in that position now.
Yeah, so I got my start in quality doing research. And then I ended up getting my ASQ certified quality auditing certificate. Then I worked for a distributor that I was able to go out and audit other QMS systems. So that gave me the knowledge to then move up to becoming an engineer, and then taking that my role as an engineer to become a quality manager. So it was kind of, I guess I didn't start in the quality background, but I kind of evolved there in a way. I don't really know if many quality managers start knowing that they want to be a quality manager when they grow up, but that's kind of how my path went.
Anybody else have any experience or suggestions here for Deborah?
I think, each path can be different because as Amanda mentioned, like yours was this way. Maybe somebody else will be studying quality since the very beginning. Myself, I am biomedical engineer. I started by building medical devices, then moved into the research, then was working on the business. And now I'm kind of like marrying all these, let's say, different areas of expertise, and went more on the side of the good side, the quality side. So I believe each path can be different, but if you would like to become the quality manager, try to get the knowledge, maybe some certificates, and hands-on experience also will help. Maybe shadowing some more senior quality managers will help as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I mentioned my background is in software engineering, and I've run engineering and R&D and manufacturing, and I kind of accidentally ran into quality and regulatory. I had an old boss who worked at an equity firm, and they bought a medical device company in the Bay Area, and he asked me if I could come help with the medical device company. So I came up, and I started a consulting company and went up there and started helping them with product and project management and engineering and R&D, and their regulatory and quality manager actually quit, and they didn't have anybody, and their ISO cert was getting ready to expire. So they asked me if I would run quality and regulatory, and I asked them if they were psycho, because I'm an engineer, and I said, as long as you let me bring in a consultant or two to fill in gaps in my knowledge, because I don't know all the regulations to the letter like a regulatory professional would, but I know what needs to be done because I've been doing medical devices for long enough. And what's really interesting, I think it's kind of like Veronica might have a similar experience, is that since I didn't grow up as a quality person, I grew up as a person who had to interface with quality. It kind of gives you a different perspective, actually. Because I didn't grow up in that silo of I'm the quality regulatory person who's trying to tell everybody else what to do and how to do it. I grew up as the person who had to do it the right way to satisfy quality and regulatory needs. And so that was kind of interesting, because then you can, it really makes you pretty effective, because your cross-functional partners can see you as someone who, like, you used to be them. And so it kind of helps with your speaking with authority and your level of confidence and understanding. You're like, totally understand where you're from. Like, I was there, and you can help paint that picture a little better of, what they're doing and why they're doing it and why it needs to be done. So it's actually a good transition. I don't know if Veronica had the same experience, but I think for sure for me.
Yes, David, actually, yes, 100% agree with you. Like, actually transitioning from the other side helps you, because also you understand the other side, right? Like, now you are on the quality side, so how to explain the quality for,
Exactly.
for the customers, for the engineers. So this really helps.
Awesome. Well, we are at time. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. And thank you, David, Amanda, Carlos, and Veronica for taking the time to share your industry insights with us. We will have the recording posted online by the end of the day. Make sure you check in with us to watch any content that you might have missed throughout the week.
If I could just answer Jim's question real quick, MDSAP is
okay.
required for Canada.
Sure.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Greenlight Guru, for
Yes.
putting this together. This is a
I
lot
see
of
that
fun, a lot of awesome.
We got your question in there, Jim.
And thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure.